Here we are again. This is something I thought about. Um, this is a
Cities,
subject I've thought about making. Here we go. This is a
cities.
subject I've thought about making. Here we go. I've thought about making one of these flip grids. I've been thinking a lot and experimenting in my mind and a little bit on the flip grid with the way to do topics. One idea is just, hey, make a topic, don't give the answer. But then those are kind of generic. The other is, yeah, make 5 or 10 minute old style videos on anything. It has to be encapsulated into 5 or 10 minutes. And just make regular videos, and those are the topic starters. Um, in terms of this subject, it's an interesting subject to me, natalism and anti-natalism. But the same thing with science. Those subjects, I want to have a discussion. I don't want to just have, 10 years of talking points screamed at each other. So those subjects are less interesting in that they're overplayed compared to some more equally important, but still subtle and not thought about often enough type subjects, such as consciousness and life, and what is life, what is human life, what is life in general. Um, but then Christopher comes along out of blue, and he's made a couple stray videos, every once in a while. But he made this one I watched. It was in reference to a video I hadn't watched, not going to watch. Um, then he has another video that was in reply to a response, I guess, and men have made, which I have queued, but I think it's like an hour, so probably not going to watch that whole thing, but maybe get a sense of in between showing Cristofer7's two videos, the one before and the one after. This itself also, as I was saying, is a response to an In Manham video, but that's a different one, which you'll say which one it is, and you could go watch it if you want. Cristofer7's old time YouTuber, always appreciated him. Very level headed, very interesting, an individual take, and not interesting in the how weird, but just a very like interesting food for thought always in his positions. I've always found. Um, so let's just listen to this video. I do have it sped up a little bit.
From Mindum from his Do Not God channel. Uh, Google is evil. Just a bag of arguments. February the 13th, 2022. And I'm only addressing because I'm only 22 minutes in. I'm not addressing the whole video. I will watch the whole video. I enjoy in Mindum's videos very much. But you asked, why do people, will you get off on being a
Who
parent?
doesn't?
And I mean, I think that I know that you also framed it as that you're kind of being, I don't know. You didn't say you were joking, but you're also speaking in a mocking way. So I don't know how serious you are about that, but you might be quite serious. I mean, I don't think that people should be having kids, but as a parent, I can definitely speak to my motivations. Now, my motivations as a 20-something-year-old is not what I can speak about the rewards of being a parent. As a 20-something-year-old, I was just driven to make children with this woman that I loved. To see our blended genetics produce offspring, and then then to do the next part of a family, raising and whatnot. But as I sit here now, my sons are in their mid 20s, uh, and raising people is not an easy thing. It requires you to be very. I say it requires you to be very honest with yourself and to come from a place of love. But to have really good quality love requires complete honesty. And then there are a lot of factors that you have no control over. But the stuff that you can control, how you treat them, how the advice that you give, the way that you live your life, has rewards. They are the two They are I am not closer to any humans on this planet than my two sons, and it's a closeness that I can't have with anybody. And they have a knowledge of me, and I'm only speaking in selfish terms. I'm letting you know what I, as a parent, get out of being a parent. These two people know me better than anybody. They know me from only the way that a child's observation of a human can know a person. And being who I am, I've never fit in anywhere. I've always been a mysterious thing to people, to a point where I was insecure about, am I just a weirdo? Am I just, because a lot of things don't make sense. And from my kids, and seeing my ideas be something that actually makes them happy, healthy human beings has given me a tremendous amount of confidence. Like, I now understand that I don't need to be insecure about my realizations and my thoughts because I see that, yeah, no, it's the rest of the world, and I have no obligation to 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 uh, to feel insecure about a lot of the conclusions I come up with. You know, but I mean, that's just
Well, I'm just screwing with this thing here. I wanted to stop here because I've been watching Ray, Snake Plisskenus, rage against the world. And Christopher, I think, is talking about blaming the world. Like when you're unsettled with the environment around you, something we all go through. It's even a famous part of everybody's adolescent sort of experience trying to adjust. But, people famously have midlife crises and these adjustment issues all along. And Christopher's saying he's not that quick to blame the world. It's like, oh, I figured out what it is. The world is screwed up. Snake Plisskenus, that's his discovery. Everybody's an idiot. Nobody will do one act of cognition that it takes to make paradise. And Christopher's talking about Gary seems to have found it pretty natural to come to that conclusion. Now, I resist that conclusion all along, no matter how much the family problems, the this, or why don't they believe in me? What's my problem? What's their problem? They did something wrong. Oh, but I feel bad about the thing I did. All of that stuff, I believe in taking at face value. And you can even say that the world of man's pretty screwed up enough to say that it's a hell on earth compared to what it should be. However, I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's my love of nature, which sounds wrong really, but it's my appreciation of nature that makes me think that it's not the universe, but it's me. Maybe the human race, maybe not me. Maybe just the human race, maybe me and the human race, maybe all of the above, but whatever, it's not the universe. Because in spite of the pain in the universe, life is a very pleasing thing. The the dead, just a dry, like a desert with literally no shrubs or any life in it, has a kind of aesthetic that's appreciable. But a forest or the jungle or a lake, the ocean, the life that's all systematically in there, granted, because of nature shows and some rare experiences we have, we could see how terrible things happen in those universes. But when you're just out there observing them, I mean, you could be walking along the path, and the pattern of the pine needles on the path is interesting. And if you look down really close, those little creatures, little guys and gals wandering around down there doing things, cleaning their antenna, carrying a little thing here and there. And it's pastoral or something. It's calming. It's a positive, direct good. Like it's just nature when nature's chill. Not the scary part, but the chill part that's like most of the time.
that's
So I do think a lot of things going on come down to this. A lot of movements we're seeing, reactionary situations, come down to where somebody falls on this line about the ultimate badness of existence and life in the universe, and the relative blame for that being the universe itself, which of course is just a way of saying it's unfixable.
It's just one aspect of it. There is the part where you know that you will, for, unless tragedy strikes, I am loved immensely by these two men. And this will carry me all the way to my end. I will be surrounded by people who love me to death. And I do everything I can to earn that. Because I know that people will always lionize their parents. And we all know people with shitty parents who talk about them like they're gods. And I've always felt from the beginning like, well, earn that anyway. Like they're going to already have the evolutionary need to look at what you're saying as important and good. Well, what happens when you really try to make or say things or do things that are really good?
I
Well,
like
that's
putting him
like super cool.
maximizing.
It's very, I mean, I think people should take parenting so seriously. And I don't think that a lot of people do. And I don't understand people who are just straight up bad parents. It's like the rest of your life on earth will just be terrible because the most important thing that you could ever do with your life you've neglected. And so the rest of your days are just hell. Because how could they not be? Because all of the reasons why I am an antinatalist or the reasons are compounded if you're a bad parent. It's like your kid will know pain and death, but if you're just a silly little dickhead who's also exhausting their ability to find joy, just surviving you've really cursed them. I mean, you're almost akin to a murderer. You're almost akin to a murderer. Um, but but if you invest
I
in
believe in that. I'd
the
agree with
people you
that.
put in here, it's immensely rewarding. And I've just given you one. I mean, being able to walk with confidence, knowing that there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my type of personality, even though it doesn't really fit with a lot of the people I see. So what? And of course you can arrive at these conclusions without that. But I'm simply speaking on one aspect that I love.
Yeah, so this reminded me seeing Christopher talk like this. So this is such a layered and sophisticated and mature approach that he's an antinatalist. If I remember back in the day, he'd even admitted this to his kids, or he waited, or maybe I got that totally wrong, or maybe his dad admitted. I forget. It seems like there was one of these, Gary saying his parents admitted it to him, kind of thing. Um, Sorry, stray thought. But anyway, how layered and complex in a positive sense, how integrated. Because it's like a horrible thing and a good thing. Like I remember my dad had raised a hog one time, lived in Hawaii, and they were going to do an emu. So this hog was going to be killed and slaughtered and eaten. And my dad really treated him like a pet. Was out there petting him and talking to him and entertaining him to a little bit. And it's like he's just going to stab that pig in the back, literally. And that's a terrible thing, but it doesn't mean that the pig had to be raised terribly. So maybe it's something like that because Cristofer7 thinks that life's terrible. I think he accepts, one of these arguments anyway for antinatalism. It's not worth the risk or something. But that doesn't mean that has to spoil. It's kind of like an opposite direction, where the kids get to live on their good full life. So the beginning, just taking the risk was, oh, sorry, but if it's good, it's good, and really leaning into that, and also maybe as a way of not questioning being a good parent. Like if you're an antinatalist and you have kids, obviously you should be the best parent ever, or that you can be. I mean, which is what Christopher's saying he does.
And there are more. There are so many more. And of course there is the negative. I worry. My oldest drove up north during very bad weather because he's in the medical industry, and he had to go to a hospital to apply his craft, and he had to go during that time. And it's stuff like that. I mean, you worry. And as a parent, if you're trying to be a decent parent, you're always reviewing your relationship. You're reviewing how you're interacting, how you're like for me, I'm always trying to make sure that the connection is clean, that that I'm coming to the table, always with new observations, or not necessarily new, but I take nothing for granted. I take absolutely nothing for granted, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of stress and worry, and things will affect your children that, of course, you have no control over, and tragedy will strike, and if it strikes one of my children, yeah, I will be devastated. And so I'm always just wishing for the smoothest ride for them. But ultimately, the ride will hit the rocks, and all is lost. But in between the beginning and the end, I am doing my best so they can soak up every joyful thing that this world has to offer, and it does have joy to offer. I mean, I'm not an antinatalist because I'm pissed off at reality.
So that's like another layer. It's just admitting it has joy to offer, which is also good, even though all of the antinatalists, I think, technically admit that. And that's why, like, Snake Plisskenus right now is, he's not some antinatalist. He's the universe is terrible, it should correct itself, as opposed to the antinatalist position, which, um, yeah, technically does not deny that there's joy in life, though often that's followed by, but it doesn't really count, or it's not really enjoyable because it counts, or at least it seems like that. Whereas Cristofer 7, obviously, or not necessarily obviously, but oops, I'm still in the full screen. Probably should switch. I'm going to be practicing this. I'm setting up modes, and it seems a little random. Well, at least I'm practicing. But I like the noisy screens, but that doesn't mean they can't all be fit in better and better and figure out what works. Um, so, yeah, admitting that there's joy and then working to create that kind of situation and then being open to enjoying that part, that which is enjoyable, that you are able to enjoy. Like, just because something is enjoyable doesn't mean something is enjoyed, that it gets enjoyed by the person, because they might be, yeah, I could enjoy it, but I don't want to. Everybody's been there, right? All right.
Or think that there is no joy in this world. There are joyful moments. There is a reward for being addicted to the truthful observations. Because then you can really understand how to tease out real pleasure, real pleasurable experiences. And it's simple shit. I mean, I'm not talking about big stuff, but those things are important. And it's also important to have the ability to recognize that things are good. Some people just simply have just have no ability to, because of fearing for the next awful thing. And the awful thing will always come, no matter your mood. So how about you pick a better mood? Because the good, or if you're able, I'm not, it's not so easy, but it is better. It is good to acknowledge the good and enjoy the good, and that will keep you when the bad comes. The good. And then the obvious stuff. It's so rewarding to be a parent because of the love. The love is huge, and the love sustains us all. Their love for me sustains me. My love for them. I mean, I can't. I mean, I would imagine it helps them. And also, I'm trying to live. I'm gonna eventually do the Obi-Wan Kenobi, where I'm gonna be gone. But I hope I loom so large in their lives that the way I am will continue to encourage and inspire them until their last days, to the point where parenting almost feels like a pyramid scheme. Like, if they were to have kids, and I don't think that they will, but if they were, I would have mixed feelings. But I would almost be a little, I would be happy on some level, but I would want them to have what I have, but for them, for these kids who I don't know yet, who I will not have as big of an attachment, but I would want them to have, people who love them deeply for the rest of their days. I would want that, outside of like a spouse or something, you know, because it's a different thing between a parent and a kid. And I'm only saying all of this because I've heard you puzzle over what you get out of being a parent. I get out so much, but I can't speak for other parents. Some people puzzle. I don't understand how some people. I don't understand the moves some people make. But for myself, it is immensely rewarding. So.
So I'm not going to go into the details, but so in my situation, I'm in a reverse situation here. I don't advise everybody to have children, and I think people should think about it rationally more so than I did to have children. But then, because the whole thing crashed and burned, it's kind of like there was all these good times, like very good feelings and good two-way knowing you're loved kind of thing, and knowing the other person know you love them and stuff. And but it all crashes and burns, and it's like, oh, it comes to naught. What was the point? But Christopher made me think about all the years that were good, and even some of the last ones that were difficult. Um, in the case of my older daughter, um, like for example, it's better than them being gone. But the point is, back there, we used to walk down and get the newspaper on Sunday and make a Sunday breakfast, and we took the dog to the park every day, and we'd walk down and up the creeks and the rivers and go to the beaches every weekend, the little local ones where nobody was. And even though it's not to the end of my days, like Christopher, knock on wood is hoping, it made me feel good. Okay, so then he made another video that's a reply here. Cheryl DeRue, it's the goal. I'm saying it's the fact that the chill part's out there, and it can be most of the time. It's possible we chill most of the time, and there's various extreme circumstances that show you how chill people can be in the situation where you imagine people couldn't be chill, but it is just an attitude, and most little bugs and things are just crawling along, chill, going about their business, or their relaxation. Okay, so I had not seen this from the comments, some thoughts, but I saw this one.
I may not. I must have made the most unclear video ever. Hyperbole. But
So he's replying to, I believe, this. So I haven't seen this. Let's just watch this, a little bit of this. I'm not going to watch the whole 52 minutes, but let's see if we get an idea early on what Christopher, and we can get the rest of the context from Christopher's other video. And I forget if I watched the second one or decided to put it aside to watch later. And now here I am. I'll know once I start watching it.
Partially, I would argue that my first video was about this key phrase, people speak. And so we're sort of talking past each other a little bit, I guess. But there is a point to be made, I think, an important one. I think in terms of making the argument about what the male role in society when it comes to procreation and having kids. Because I think it's a role that's a lot easier to disable. Because I don't think it has much merit. It's all just a psychology crapola, very thin. The ambitions of men in baby making is really trivial, I guess. I would argue that women are also trivial in their thinking. I'm just saying that for men it's even more trivial, in terms of what they're sacrificing by not having kids, especially. And I think that's an important distinction. So leave us play it from this point.
like, does he? I mean, does he really wonder if I mean, I don't know. I don't know. You never know where people are at. I mean, surely he doesn't think that, but.
So he's talking about you just want to smell diapers or something. I don't know if I said that, but that's what is the drive? So now the counter phrase.
In case.
No,
it's
this
like,
is
it isn't
wrong.
for love.
This can't be it. This isn't it. I can't be, right?
I mean, having kids is the most natural
What's this
thing
one
in the world.
called?
Okay, so I'm saying that's just crap. That's not even close to the truth. So
I
there's
guess
just
it
no
is.
evidence that our deep ancestors, it was natural to have kids,
Yeah.
in the sense that they didn't have any ambition or any drive or any desire to make babies. That no male interacts in the world.
Yeah, I don't want to try to understand this. Sorry, this is really just about Christopher. I thought maybe I should give that by context, but I'm not gonna.
So apparently, I
Sorry.
may not. I must have made the most unclear video ever.
I doubt it.
Hyperbole. But I don't think anyone should have kids. And by the way, what would have worked for me was just any of the topics, any of the points made. There was no discussion about, or none that met my ears, about whether or not a person should have kids, simply based on the fact that, or I should, people would say, "Oh, the world's a terrible place, so you shouldn't have kids." That didn't motivate me because, the conditions can be better. So it's always like, but no, I'll set them up. But just really understanding, what life is. If I YouTube would have probably helped me, but I made kids before the time of YouTube, and my video was simply talking about the pleasures of the gold medallion of a very stupid race. It would be like us, the race being treacherous and dangerous and ridiculous, and you have to hop on one leg and then you have to get on a tricycle. Like, it's completely stupid, but at the end you get pizza and a gold medal. Now let's say the pizza's delicious.
So, in other words, just because you win the race doesn't mean you should endorse the race, like in the Hunger Games.
Is it worth the race? No. But it would be dishonest to say, and the pizza sucks too. It's like, well, no. I mean, the pizza's not bad. And if you detect that a person is telling you the pizza sucks, but you've tasted it and you know that it has some decent flavors, then you know they're clearly lying. And I am simply stating that, listen, for all of the hazards, you shouldn't have kids. If you have kids, make it worth what you've done, and it will never be worth it. But you have to understand the burden you've placed. But don't but don't do it. I can't say that there are some upsides, and I keep stressing selfishly for me, selfishness is not a virtue. I am saying that there are parts of being a parent that I do take pride in personally, but these are the actions of a very young man who didn't think about that. And Mindem, we are clearly different personality types, and it's of course there are different types of people, and I admire your personality type. I don't have the personality type. I'm developing more toward your end of it, but I don't have the personality type. Didn't have the personality type where
So, by developing towards his end of it, I mean, I think he's talking about the blaming the world. To me, that's just becoming a bitter old man, you know? And I saw the baby boomers, so my parents were like the oldest of the baby boomer generation, almost the oldest, but like in the oldest in their siblings and almost at the top end of what's considered baby boomer, and had me at 18. So I saw them young. And they had a big thing about how like their parent generation was like, oh, all angry old men. Some of them they treated or called fascists, but they were all fairly, moderate politically people, and that wasn't really the deal, but just that they are bitter and angry and bossy, and then they become that. Now, a lot of people have theories about as you get older, you become mellow or meaner. And a lot of people base those theories on their own grandparents or whatever, or what they're just told in their family. You start to see it in your life, and it pretty much goes the way I always thought, which if you start hard ass, you're probably going to mellow because you'll get slapped back by nature about the problems of being a hard ass. And if you start out too mellow, you'll probably become really, more abrasive. Same thing, real peaceful, everything's so peaceful, and then the shit will happen. You don't go, no, it's actually shit. If you go, everything's shit, if you don't get trapped in that, if you're open to thinking, well, maybe it's not shit, you go, no, this stuff's enjoyable. And so the goal is to be less bitter. And the idea that we have control over how angry or judgmental we'd be of the universe makes people think that somehow it's dishonest to take that control. But our attitudes are just literally, like by definition, literally directly imaginary things that we create. We're the author of them. So we can make whatever kind of painting. It's not like, oh, I want to paint a beautiful flower that everybody will think is a beautiful painting, but somehow I owe it to honesty to paint something terrible. No, just admit you paint what you want to paint, and then you can't complain about that's what has to get painted. So if you paint an angry, blaming the universe end, and you don't have to, because the terrible things in the universe can help you to feel sorry for the universe and pity what's going on in it. It doesn't have to be an in Mendham, I wish I had a red button to end it all approach, because that's where that approach comes from.
I'm fine, the world sucks. I have developed that, but it seems like you showed up with that. You showed up with a level of confidence that I simply didn't have. But I'm not saying, and so I had kids, and now you should, and it'll help your personality. I was simply speaking of the reward.
I'm going to say another thing. I guess I probably had the I'm fine, the world sucks attitude as a kid or at some points. And maybe that's a attitude that can help you survive, but I always thought, it's the world of mankind. We fucked it up. If you go running up and down the river which I did a lot as a child, I guess. So that really helped me. It's fucking eating. It's like fucking eating 24 hours a day if you want to stay during nights, eating at night. It's fucking awesome. Sometimes there's rattlesnakes. That's one of the most exciting things. If you get bit by one and die, that would suck. But I mean, generally, those exciting moments don't ruin it. They punctuate the story, and they're reasons not to be la 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 la. Like you don't, like it's Eden where you fall and you never stub your toe. No, you can break your leg and starve to death in the woods. Doesn't mean it's not worth climbing up the hill and over the rocks to see a ledge. It's idyllic. Nature is just awesome. You go out there and it just pumps you full of, and I've seen a lot of tourists go to pretty industrialized like campgrounds, and I go there and it's like, this isn't really nature. But I could still enjoy it. But I'm talking about you hike 5 hours, or for that matter, drive an old dirt road in California into the, state forest 15 miles and hike a half a mile and just be there. It doesn't matter what's there. If there's just shrubs, and whether that's a beautiful waterfall or just a little hillside with some shrubs around it, it's beautiful and fascinating. And that's more the world than us. So the shitty part of the universe, definitely, if it has a blame, it's the human universe. Right? I mean,
I got from a very stupid act that no one should do. And luck plays a huge part. And I don't want to say it's all luck, but luck plays so much. Because luck is all around. I mean, we are a product of luck. It's dumb luck that we exist at all. Everything is just, I mean, we're gathering all of these
wasn't for bad
good
luck.
and bad, and crafting stories from it, and crafting realities, and acting like there's some steady foundation upon all this luck. And I understand that there isn't. But I am simply speaking of the pizza you get if you've made it to a certain part of the race. But don't run the race. And pizza's not worth all of it. Like don't invite people into it. But it's not all a terrible thing, and I'm not at the end of it either. So in a way, I'm guessing my video is a bit pointless, to just say that I enjoy being a parent, because I guess it does sound like I'm saying so you should do it too. I'm not saying that at all. Or let me be clear: no one should have kids. No one should have kids. My own kids shouldn't have kids. But and I'm second guessing myself. Like, should I say the positive? But the positive is something that I truthfully feel. But I don't think that the positive is larger than the negative. So I guess I won't say. But I'm not sure if it's right that I don't say.
Interesting. Okay, so a big part, I think, of what's going on here is that Cristofer is just more enlightened than a normal person. And he sees the honesty of the situation as primary. And in fact, the fact that he can have a positive attitude about his children and how that turned out the pizza at the end of the race, the fact that he can still calculate that antinatalism is the right path and we shouldn't have kids, that if anything, that argues more strongly for antinatalism. Like, it's not just because you can't have kids, it's not just because you had got a divorce and were sad or whatever. So that's an enlightened view. Most people these days still are at the mind level where if you're going to argue don't have kids, argue it's all bad. If you're going to argue Putin should not invade the Ukraine, argue that he's all to blame and nobody else is for what's going on. It doesn't take two to tango. And just this one black and white thinking, but not always just black and white. It can even be gradient, but that there's nothing on the other side of the balance. You can't go, hey, well, look, there's just less than over here. And you especially can't go, well, look, I got a big weight that's a big balance, but it was just luck. It could be I just got lucky. So that's a sophisticated, awesome thing. That helped me think a little bit. So this is an interesting thing that's the center of everything here. Did that not go in? Oh.
The membrane. The F1 complex is outside of the membrane, while the F0 complex is embedded in the membrane. There's the stalk, including...
Let's start this over. So this is ATP synthase. This is what makes the little
We are looking at the
the
turning gamma
energy.
subunits and the epsilon subunits. And there's the C ring in the membrane.
Okay, so I'll give it. This is the little machine, protein machine, that makes ATP, which is the little batteries. They're little like glow sticks that when all the other proteins snap them, they get a little jolt of energy, and it's what fuels all the cellular motion and therefore all the motion, period. This is a little machine that makes them. I think in the mitochondrial something area on the edge of the mitochondria.
We are looking at the turning gamma subunit and the epsilon subunits. And there's the C ring in the membrane. The F1 complex is outside of the membrane, while the F0 complex is embedded in the membrane. There's the stalk, including the delta and the B subunit. The alpha subunits are shown in light pink. The beta subunits are magenta. In the middle, the central stalk is rotating. The B subunit stabilizes the hexamer, which means that the hexamer can't rotate. We will now look at a rendering of known structural states and the conformational changes that are happening. The beta subunits are seen as a ribbon diagram. The ADP and inorganic phosphate diffuse into the active site, and the ATP has just been released. And simultaneously, the conformational change occurs in the beta subunit. If we zoom into the active site, we can see the molecular structure of the substrates and the chemical reaction. Here is ADP with its two phosphates. They are all held in place by a network of hydrogen bonds mediated by the amino acids in the folded structure of the beta subunit. Hydrogen bonds stabilize the base and the sugar, but really primarily the base. There's also a magnesium ion that plays a critical role in not just stabilizing, but also neutralizing the charge of the phosphates. Notice the conformational changes that are happening when the inorganic phosphate comes in. There is the promotion of a planar transition state. Synthesis of a new phosphodiester bond is catalyzed, and then the subunit switches to the open conformation. Upon this reconfiguration in the beta subunit, ATP is ejected from the active site. The enzyme then resets and restarts the synthesis of another ATP molecule. This is a summary of the events at the active site. It is also intriguing just how the C ring rotates. We can start with the analogy of a water wheel. We can easily grasp the idea of how a water wheel rotates. It's driven by the flow of water, allowing the wooden fins to go in a particular direction. Thus, the rotation happens in a specific direction. If the water was to flow in the opposite direction, you would see rotation of the water wheel in the opposite direction. Here we see the C ring and the A subunit. We don't know the full structure of the A subunit, but we know that there's an access channel for protons on the A subunit right in the intermembrane space. And there's a separate egress channel for protons on the matrix side. In this animation, you see protons flowing out from an interface between the C ring and the A subunit. But what drives the specific direction of this rotation? For example, if we were looking down, it is always a counterclockwise rotation.
Okay, so one of my questions right now is when they see those protons going along like that, I think they're showing. I think the protons, okay, are moved along by water molecule reactions, right? So when they say a proton, they really mean a hydrogen without its electron. But the interaction with the electrons and the water and stuff is how it gets shuffled along. But no, it's also like these mechanisms in the protein have little channels for it. It actually might talk a little bit about that. But that's one of my questions, like what's the detail on that?
Why?
And I've read it before, but I just have to keep watching this stuff to get how these little mechanics work.
What drives that? On each of the C subunits within the C ring, there is a proton binding site. Notice the high concentration of protons on the intermembrane side and their flow to the lower concentration on the matrix side.
Okay, I think intermembrane they mean inside the little mitochondria organelle.
Protons load from the
I could be wrong, just correct me in comments. This is stuff I'm trying to watch to understand more.
highly concentrated intermembrane side onto the C subunits, and they are released on the matrix side where the concentration of the protons is low. But why can't protons go around the other way as well? In principle, just as in the water wheel analogy, the C ring should be able to rotate in either direction, shouldn't it? There are two interconnected reasons for this unidirectional movement. The amino acid side chains in C subunits would repel the bound proton, so that when a proton loads from the intermembrane side, the C ring cannot rotate back in the opposite direction because it is energetically unfavorable. Rotating counterclockwise, on the other hand, is energetically favorable because there are no repulsive interactions.
By the way, the little things with the little squid tails going down together, those are little lipids, and lipids are fat cells, and that's what all little cellular membranes are made of. And what's funny is it's just like a soap film where it's floating next to each other. Things can go through it and get pushed apart. It's not like stuck together like glue. It's just like gently magnetically held together by the fact that it's hydrophobic on one side, which forces that side to the inside of the membrane because it's water on both sides of the membrane, outside each side, and so inside the membrane the hydrophobic parts get shoved to the center, and that's how all these membranes are made.
Remember, there's a concentration gradient that favors binding of protons on the intermembrane side and the release of protons on the matrix side. So in summary, the proton gradient determines the direction of the rotation, favoring movement in the counterclockwise direction of the C ring. This avoids unfavorable interactions with the amino acid side chains of the C ring. Are produced. Found in eukaryotic cells that play an important role in the production of ATP, the universal energy currency used in all cells. Most mitochondrial proteins are transported from the cytosol into mitochondria through specialized protein translocator complexes. Interactions between these complexes bring the outer and inner mitochondrial membranes into close proximity. The successful targeting of many proteins that reside in the intermembrane space requires translocator complexes that cross both the outer and inner membranes. After entering the inner membrane translocator, many of these proteins do not completely cross the membrane, but instead are released into the membrane and diffuse laterally. They then remain embedded in the inner membrane or are cleaved, releasing a portion into the intermembrane space. Very few resident proteins are simply transported across the outer membrane translocator complex. Matrix proteins do not transit through the intermembrane space, but are directly transported from the cytoplasm across the interacting outer and inner membrane translocators. The protein-rich matrix contains enzymes necessary for cellular respiration, a process during which carbon fuel molecules are oxidized and reduced electron carriers are produced. Invaginations of the inner membrane, called cristae, contain 4 large protein complexes that harvest electrons from these carriers. Complex 2 accepts pairs of electrons from succinate and transfers them through a series of redox centers to coenzyme Q. The lipid-soluble coenzyme Q is reduced by electrons harvested from complexes 1 and 2, and then diffuses through the inner membrane, transferring its electrons to complex 3. In complex 3, electrons are transferred through 2 distinct series of redox centers, which allow them to cross the inner membrane one at a time. Finally, electrons are accepted by cytochrome C, which carries them to complex 4, where they are transferred through another series of redox centers to their final acceptor, a molecule of oxygen, that combines with hydrogen ions to form water. Electron transport in complexes 2, 3, and 4
I just love this
coupled
stuff.
with the pumping of protons from the matrix to the intermembrane space.
So all of these machines are proteins. And proteins are made in these long strings of the amino acids printed, and then they fold up, no one knows how, in the water, just floating there, fold up, which is why I think there has to be some sort of circuitry in the water. And then they're freaking little robots and stuff. And it's what happens is the DNA is brought out as RNA by these other little protein robots, and so the DNA has all the blueprints for the amino acids that fold into all of the machines, and that's how everything works, like in just 5 terms or so. That's the whole deal. And the DNA is all wound up really, really tight, and yet there's still enough spaces everywhere for the little robot librarians to go into the DNA and take out the right sheets of DNA, like the right book, out and bring it out so then it can print some protein. And this is what life really is. We think we're life. No, we're just like a bunch of these guys. Like if you had a bunch of little chipmunks all standing on each other in a trench coat so that they can get into the movie, that's what we are. We're just like this, acrobat group, or actually like a sophisticated colony of algae or something. And this is the real life. This is actually the bottom. This is the thing that's really alive. This is, however this works, is what life is really about.
The resulting electrochemical gradient across the inner membrane is called the proton motive force. Protons flow back into the matrix through a component of the ATP synthase called F0. The membrane-embedded ring structure of F0 binds protons in the intermembrane space and releases them on the other side of the inner membrane into the matrix. Proton flow drives the rotation of the ring structure, which in turn leads to the rotation of the F0 central shaft. The rotating shaft sequentially contacts the 3 catalytic subunits of the ATP synthase F1 complex, altering the subunit's affinity for ATP and ADP, and catalyzing the synthesis and subsequent release of ATP. Most of the ATP synthesized in the mitochondrial matrix is consumed outside of the
I had a good idea about how to represent the ATP. So they're like, I said, glow sticks, but they're little batteries that are getting spit out. So the batteries are in the cell water, so they're available. So they're just always in hand. Like if you're the workman, the little protein, the little robot, it's like, oh, there, you can grab them somehow. It's not clear. They don't get grabbed. They fly into the power slot. So again, water circuitry. That's going to be my Nobel Prize about the water circuitry. Somebody else will probably get that, but dibs. No. I thought of a good example of how the energy really works. I mean, it makes a little chemical that when you put it apart, it makes a spark. That's fair enough way to think of it. But it's a lot like, and when we think of our simple physics models, it's like if you had a little steel marble or big size, you know, when the gumball size marble on a little spring, and it compresses the spring, you know, halfway. Well, if you flick the marble off from the side, tink, it takes a little bit of energy. Tink, you got to break it. That glow stick you have to put, but more energy comes out. What? The spring shoots up. So, yeah, this is a great.
But the inner membrane is impermeable to ATP and ADP. Therefore, an ATP-ADP carrier is responsible for the coordinated import of ADP and the export of ATP across the inner membrane. In cells, mitochondria are distributed near sites where ATP and other mitochondrial metabolites are in high demand. Mitochondria move along cytoskeletal structures such as microtubules and can undergo dynamic changes in shape, including both fusion with other mitochondria and division.
So that other little machine was right on the surface of this.
Perturbations in the dynamic behavior of mitochondria and alterations in mitochondrial membrane permeability are associated with the early stages of programmed cell death.
Okay, let's just see. I feel bad that I did that. Okay, so this is definitely Christopher. Is it on the same video? Whatever. We'll watch this until I can't watch anymore.
With that ambition, maybe seahorses or something. I mean, you have to go to some, you know, where there's some parental instinct. There's none. The males play so little a role. I mean, all the smartest animals, like elephants, males play almost zero role. You know, they just go rogue. They hang out with the family to get laid, and then they basically abandon it. Okay, and all the simians, it's, you know, there's no fatherly role models in orangutans or gorillas or chimpanzees. They don't play a role. I mean, any kind of substantial role. You know, beyond defending their harem, there's no role to play. It's not a thing. They're not thinking. Like I've said, you know, do you really think a male is thinking? You know, a male animal in the wild is thinking about making babies when he performs the act that will cause it to happen? Of course not. It's not part of the agenda. It's okay if my harem gets bigger, it doesn't bother him, but he doesn't care.
Well, you should speak for yourself, and obviously every different animal has a different kind of whether they stay together to raise the cubs, and humans have been doing that for millions of years, and in fact our babies require extra care, and you can't hunt and watch a little creature that can't even move. You know, like a monkey is like 60% full grown at the end of the first season or whatever. So look up the numbers, but really fast. Ours are just little larvae forever, and who cares anyway? Evolutionary history doesn't tell me how I have to live. If I find myself wanting to be Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I'm perfectly allowed to walk around on my hands all day long. And you just old reactionary attitudes of, no, don't do that, walk on your 2 feet, it's unnatural. Who cares what you think?
You know, I mean, you know, American Indian women had to, you know, they had to go out in the woods and
Why
have
am I
babies
doing this?
because men were so turned off by the whole damn thing.
Yeah,
they don't even want to know.
Okay.
I don't want you to see it. I don't want to know about it.
Little,
just do whatever you have to do. Get it over with. Blah 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 blah. And yes, you can bring back the squirmy little creepy thing, but I don't want to know anything to do with it. So it isn't the most natural thing for a male. I'm just going to argue that that's just not true. And that if I was
I would say, and that doesn't matter.
really honest as a male, there's nothing.
You might as well say that's not that common. Okay, welcome to, I guess that's the statistics. Who cares?
There's no there. A kid has zero utility. It doesn't. Having kids will not get you laid.
Having kids will not get you laid. Christopher was pointing out that what it will get you is true love and appreciation, possibly, not guaranteed, and that will last, barring certain odds, you know, the rest of his life. And you're saying, but you can't get laid. But he's not saying that it's a good reason to have children. But I'm going to point out the reason you don't like that argument brought up, or that those facts brought up, is because it's the other way around. Evolution has made getting laid super pleasurable, so obviously pleasurable that even someone of your nature could notice it. But it's really there to trick you into having kids, for the reason Cristofer found. So he had sex for the reason you said. I think this is what he said, and all the regular young reasons, and maybe not thinking about it, or thinking yay or whatever, hormonal ecstasy, not whatever, not really thinking about it, or wanting to get laid, and you end up with the kid, and then if you're lucky, you have this situation of love and lifelong love, right? So having kids would help you get laid. You've got it backwards.
Exactly the opposite happens. Having kids gets you unlaid.
It gets you. The reason the DNA gives you that obvious pleasure that even a brute can recognize is because it wants more kids. And if you play the game right and do be a child, a man interested in your children, then you can end up with the relationship that Cristofer fortunately has.
So, no, I don't buy the argument that it's the most natural thing, having kids. Having sex is very natural. Having kids, not so natural.
And that's like such an adolescent idea, because he's going to go, of course I know that the DNA makes you have sex by making it feel really good so that you can trick you into having kids. So the DNA fooled you with this short-term gambit of sex, and you wised up and didn't have kids. But it's definitely a trick to get people to have kids before they can think about it.
If the byproduct was, if all the women were sterile, the male's behavior wouldn't change any. Yeah, that's the truth. All right, so now we'll play the rest of the video. Just because we're here.
That's probably true.
Saying it's the most natural thing, as in to support it. I'm saying that it almost goes past the thought of, you only think in terms of should I, mostly for financial reasons, or if you're like, oh, I don't think I'd be a good parent. And I am at the point, or I am coming from the point where even if you're a great parent, you really shouldn't bring anybody in.
Right, so we're conceding that argument that you can't control the experiment, so there's no point in doing the experiment because 90% of the experiment's going to be out of your control, or some kind of number like that. It's going to be way out of your control. The part you control is so minor and so small that no way should you do this experiment, because it's a precise experiment. The outcomes can be catastrophic. It's nuclear fission or something, and you just shouldn't mess with it, okay, because you just don't have enough control, period. So we can agree on that. But I'm still going to ask the question. What motivated you was, I don't think, a desire to be a parent. You can say, okay, it was. All right, I'm saying I don't understand that desire because I never had it. Okay, so of course I can't understand it.
Well, I didn't know that he actually said that, but maybe Gary listened closer as far as, or some other video. I wasn't sure about Cristofer saying whether he hadn't thought about it, or it just seemed natural, or it's just a thing you do, or whether it was intended or not, or how intended. Just that he hadn't had these antenatal reflections at the time, and he wasn't going to let having them later interfere with doing a good job at parenting. But I wanted to be a parent. And my self-psychological analysis would be that's because, my parents divorced real young, and they, they had cool ideas about, hey, we should do this, and what if we did this, and all the, now I always wanted a house, I wanted to settle down. So everything I ended up wanting out of stability was about having a little family place. And, and raising people to be good citizens, have good attitudes, be chill, and not want to boss the world or rule the world, things like that. And now, is that common? Oh, no, it's in the minority, and I'm applying it to a psychological situation. However, I do think a lot more people than Gary realizes, um, when they're into relationships and they're willing to adapt to relationships and the nature of the relationship, you could explain it a lot of ways sociologically, but really the hormones and all the chemicals are just making it so, trying to make a magic spell on your brain so that you'll come up with a reason that, even if it doesn't seem right, let's do it, that wants you to have a child, and it wants that, you know, pretty much at the beginning of adolescence on, it fires up that energy in the rational brain, and rational emotions can tamp it back. But there's no real need to explain it in terms of rational reasons, because your head's going to play tricks on itself because it's programmed to be that way. Somebody that doesn't fall one way or another for the dominoes of the biochemistry is also on the outlier, not in the bulk of how most people are. So, most guys will tell you they do eventually want to be a father, at least until the Gen X millennial generation. I'm not so sure now. I think a lot of the 20-year-old generation and maybe younger are more non-natal. And I don't think being non-natal individually means anti-natalism, because it's really a matter of choice. And some people should have children. And Cristofer7 has always seemed so reasonable and level-headed. He's the kind of person that, so just imagine I could meet him young and I go, this guy would be a good father, and then he did turn out to be, well, then that's the kind of people that should be doing it. So, and if they had to be antinatalist in order to take it as a precious responsibility, like, geez, people shouldn't even be brought into this world. It's so scary. I've got to make this work as well as possible. And not everybody would succeed because there's the luck and fate to things. But if you do that, then, and by the way, I definitely was intensely, I spent a ton of time, all the time, daily things. I had that attitude, but I don't think I was probably the right person to. I should, I read when I was young, Nietzsche said, philosophers should not really have children. But I wouldn't put myself in that category, even though I had 100,000% of the love, and I devoted a lot of time to trying to make it all work out. But I maybe didn't have the right personality characteristics for it. Though my son now, my stepson that I've known since he was 4, and he's now, college age, off to college, he's doing great, and I love him, and I hope I've helped him. But I don't know Cristofer7 really well enough. It's probably a similar situation. But from where I'm standing, he seems like a pretty solid guy, like the kind of guy you'd want to have as your dad. So, maybe just people like that should have children. We shouldn't extinctify the whole human race. So, anyway, I have another video I want to watch later. Just give a little teaser here. Also, there's some old videos. Dynacats, and I meant to say something about this. Dynacats Love Me has contributed a bunch of subject matter to the thing. And I know I'm slow at this, and I'm trying to go, and there's the motivation factor, but I'm not going to make excuses. But it's still there in the Discord. The beauty is, and I have been reviewing it, and I would like to go through that, because I think, especially with video, well, you had some Matt Binder, and I love Matt Binder. I want to donate to that guy. I keep forgetting. I like him. I want to support his work. Been watching him for years since Majority Report. But and again, a lot more lately. But watching some of those videos, when I say put suggestions on there, even though they're old. So I think watching some videos, especially if I haven't seen them, or rewatching ones I'm really interested in, because I do a lot of video rewatching, and I could just do those here. Now people might be bored by it, but you know,
My mom
so
and a seasoned
as we know, people are bored anyway.
pro. This
G of T. If you
So this is
multiply
really
this,
interesting.
here is what we're going to build to this video.
Fast
a certain
Fourier.
animated
Fourier.
approach to thinking about a super important idea from math, the Fourier
How you decompose waves. It's all about how interference works, but you can make one signal with other signals. All right, I think that I kind of wish, you know, if people have any anybody that's watched this long should have a suggestion for me on the flip grid, how to deal with topics. Like, if it's just a 2-second topic and I can just free will it, like, you know, and I can take an easy out, like, what do you think about abortion? Or, you know, all the old standards, with Pascal's wager. You know, I could do 2-minute introductions on topics. I could do one a day. Or I could just make videos like I would make that are 10-minute videos about things that topical, philosophical, all of the above, and those could be the topics. I'd like other people to make the topics, you know, that would make it more like the original YouTube. To do that, to create a topic, you have to sign up for Flipgrid as an educator, and I could share the group with you, and if I know who you are, I'm more than happy to do that. You know, Barklord, to be serious, Daspook, and a million people. Even people that might try to screw with it, like unnamed antinatalists. But I would kick you in a second. I plan to keep the community on topic, not a clean community in terms of your position or ideology free or what your ideology is or which ones you can, but you know what I mean. So, all right, cheers. And I don't think I'll stream again tonight, but I'm going to try to keep doing it more regularly. Having the Flipgrid also makes a stream like this where, oh yeah, we'll just, for long form, this is not something you'd put as a topic, and it separates out the two kinds of things. Now, showing that biology, that's a thing I watch. I watch thorium videos. There's a lot of ongoing education by video, and also reading, you know, pages. Weird that it did that. Stuff that I do that, you know, I mean, I watch streams that's what they're doing, and it's an interesting thing, because if you already have one of those hobbies and you watch baseball card collector videos, I'm probably not going to ever search those kind of videos out. But I can have like a philosophical conversational acquaintance that does that, and that's how I get my dose of it. You know what I mean? So, so maybe all this mathematical kind of stuff. Look, it's that. It's switching around. That's not what that video is anymore, is it? Oh, I see. Oh, I see the problem. So did you see that at all?
I had some curiosity. Like I said, I would have a few moments where I just say, oh yeah, it'd be interesting to see what.
No. So here's what I was showing. That's fascinating. This is the sneak peek.
Fourier transform. For anyone unfamiliar with what that is, my number one goal here is just for the video to be an introduction to that topic. But even for those of you who are already familiar with it, I still think that there's something fun and enriching about seeing what all of its components actually look like. The central example.
Oh, you recognize the voice. I didn't even remember the guy's name, but I've been watching some of his stuff, and that's funny, because I saw you said, I recognize 3 blue, 1 brown's voice, and I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? And that's the name of this channel.
Is going to be the classic.
But I didn't have it in the window right. It wasn't
sound.
tabbed right.
But after that, I also really want to show a glimpse of how this idea extends well beyond sound and frequency into many seemingly disparate areas of math and even physics.
Yep.
Really, it is crazy just how ubiquitous this idea is.
Crazy cool.
Let's dive in.
Really fun stuff. And And there's a bunch of stuff too, like I think more of this Desmos. I love to play in Desmos. I haven't for a few months or so. Well, I did just actually a week or two ago, but it'd been a while. Yeah, I'll get up here. This guy, Desmos, you can write any old equations and just do amazing stuff. So I forget when I wrote this one. And it's just an animated graph, and it's just a graph, but you can have certain, like this one, the variable c in here, is just cycling through a value. I could click and drag it too. There's other values that weren't animating, like this. So if I animate that, it's more and more leaves. I can animate both of them. So I love doing stuff in here. This is one of my favorite ones. So I made this where what it is okay, so see the purple graph is following the orange graph at a certain distance above. Kind of like a spirograph sort of a concept. I did all the math to do that. And of course you could change this is a variable it can do any, like see this, the f is the orange thing here is a cubed sine w1v over v. And you can change all the things, but you could also just change the whole equation. It could be a squared plus log w1 v over v, right? So that's that guy, and it's still, or just a regular sign. It could be probably sine of what? Wait, I need the right. Oh, a v. So v is so it'd be a sine of v. Okay, but that's why I need it to be bigger. A of v. We can make a bigger here. Oh, that's why I have the W1 as the frequency, or the wavelength. So I can make the wavelength bigger. Or no, that is the frequency. I can make that and then make this bigger. I could also zoom in. And it'll trace along it. And the distance is somewhere else, how far it is from that plane. Secondary curve, 3.5, it could be 10. Can also be another equation. It could be like sine of v. See, now it's going around it. Or sine of v plus 10, and now it's a sine wave that's exactly 10 above. Let's make the amplitude bigger. Oh, that's too big. Oh, 56 there. So that's a sine wave that's using the orange line as the level to be a sine wave of amplitude 2, 10 above the thing. And the reason it's repeating there is because up here where we have V, somewhere we have V animating, V only goes to 32 pi, so I can make it bigger. So anyway, I really like that. So this kind of thing is what I spend free time on, and you can see why I've given up on this being something to share, but maybe I should anyway. Oh yeah, this thing is this is showerhead. Yeah, this is related to, there's a thing in here with the golden ratio and what it really is. And I got it from some other videos, some of the metaphors that or just the demo or whatever. But you run into it when you play with this stuff, and also just like the modulo. Somewhere in here I have one of my favorite things ever. Why do I have to click that every time? Okay, I'm going to leave, but it's interesting. Look at some. I haven't looked at some of these. Are kind of old. It's a couple sine waves, or parametric sine waves, I guess. I like watching how things go through the chaotic and then ordered kind of transitions. And you could set that up a lot of times by making the frequencies, you know, whole number factors of each other. Like certain numbers introduce chaos and disorder, like square root of 2. WAG loop, I called this. I like that. Yeah, that's right. I remember that guy. Could be a logo. See if I animate that, it'd do this. You can also animate it so it's straight through and loops. I kind of want to look at this old. What was this one I had one I really liked. I posted it on this math group in Facebook. Everybody liked it. Starting all, there's a bunch of variables in this. Nine. I don't know what all of those do. When you build them, you end up knowing what everything does, right? I just kind of, I could do it offline, but I just want to find this one. Oh, I like that one. I like parametric equations. You can do a lot of interesting things. I mean, these equations go for infinite. You can see right there where it starts and or ends because I didn't do it forever. It's just some segment. Try to get a, sometimes they'll circle around, sometimes not. Spriter. Oh, yeah, that's nice. This is related. I think I'm close to the thing that I Lotus. What will that be? Oh, somebody else made that. I didn't make that. Oh, here we go. Psych arctan arc flower. This is the one. This equation uses modulo and just the A here. There's other versions where I parameterize more, but it's modulo theta. So theta is like it's polar coordinates, and R equals modulo theta pi to the A plus arctan modulo theta pi to the 1 over A. And then you just move A, and it does just a ton of, well, I guess I could, well, you can't hardly animate it because it goes through things so fast. Let's see, is that going to be too fast? See how slow I can slow it down. I have other versions that are like tuned better. But let's see. That's as slow as I can get it to go. from one parameter changing. See, here's where it's going ridiculously fast here in the negative area. There's some very, very interesting patterns in here. Just little tiny bits apart. Like that. Yeah, I'd like to, if I was retired or on a lottery, I would look into where all these patterns come from in this thing. And of course, this is still a segment from 1 to 32 pi of theta, right? It fills into a plane if you do it forever. Some of them, or not all of them, like the ones like this, don't. So I have another one of these. So what is this called? Synarch tan flower. Yeah, it's one of these. I gotta look at this stuff again. So this has a B as well. Oh yeah, look at that. This is the same equation, but A equals B over 100, and then I have just, this was a try to get it, slow it down. Look at all these patterns. See, look at that. That's again, there's just A, but I've used B, A equals B divided by 100 to have the changes in B smaller, right? And look at that. This is the slowest speed, and it still shoots through these. So this was the slow down. So this is what I'm saying. Look at all the detail. And this is from negative 32 pi. So theta, it's R equals a theta thing, right? So it's polar coordinates. 32 pi negative to positive 32 pi. Let's look like what it does at 0. Sorry, 0. So this is what it looks like at 0. And it's funny how it's got kind of the cardioid thing, right? So if we just start moving it over just the littlest bit. Okay, here's at 30, which means 0.03. Since A in my equation is B, now B. That's a cool one. If you look, there's some glitches. These little lines here are glitches because of the discontinuity with the mod. It gets confused calculating the line segment because it's really just a bunch of points. That line across there, see, it's getting confused because the modulo makes it skip, and it's discontinuous, and it makes a segment anyway. Like those kind, look, that's like a furry thing. Interesting. I like these kind. And the other one where I go, if you notice really close, I don't go to 32 pi, I go to 31.8 to try to cut off some of the lines that happen right at the modulo points. I like that. It looks like an aloha symbol. Gets more and more. See, the funny thing is, if you look at this mathematically, there's reason. It's like, oh, it's cyclic on this over pi, and that's when there's 42 divisions of this when you're dividing by that. But look, it almost looks like it's shaded differently, but it's just the number of lines because there's only one color. There's one cool one. That's awesome. It's got some of the glitches that looked good, though. Anyway, love to go through some. I might just do a video where I'm playing with equations, searching for cool looking equations. Alright, cheers. Yeah, they all kind of look like pinwheels or mandalas. And when you use radial, of course, you get these circular things, so it'll tend towards that. And when you do modulo, you just get very interesting, like overlapping phenomena always. I could show some of that when you're trying to make pretty. I'm in some Facebook groups that are just about like trying to make equations that are pretty or not always pretty, just random, whatever. People have different aesthetics. All right, so ooh, an hour and a half. Great. Okay, that's enough. Talk to you later. Thanks for everybody that was here. I Would love comments on suggestions on how to approach creating the topics. And I'm just going to let them sit out there. I can add them to my description and people can find them. The whole point is that it can take part over a long time. So the real hard part right now is experimenting with the platform. I don't know, maybe it's not perfect. I haven't used the mobile. People have mixed results on that. But it is what it is. Nothing's perfect. If we find something better, then that matters. But otherwise, I really appreciate people experiment with it, and I think we can use it. But what I was saying is the hard part is more just like how to approach the workflow of it, of like, do you want me to just make a regular video? But then I feel like I'm biasing it. I almost want to just come up and go, what is your political philosophy? And have the topic be that. And then if people say my philosophy is this, and we get in a big argument on one person's political philosophy, then we go, hey, let's make this a topic of its own, and that kind of thing. But I don't know, everybody's going through the same thing as me in terms of a lot of us diehards. We want to have the public conversation. It's hard to talk to people you agree with because it's almost like conflict creates the deal. And yet I think there's, you do want to talk and collaborate with people you agree with and the ones you disagree with. And I just always thought if we just leave a good trace, and especially if it's not hour-long videos but 5 and 10-minute videos, a trace that someone else interested can go through, oh, this is the argument they had, and then start a better argument that's more refined and just have a continual improvement, that would be an enjoyable way to get it going. I think the problem is that if the connectome of society is like the brain of society, we have a lot of inhibition neurons out there that make people feel like shit and make you don't want to get excited and have your excitement of saying, hey, here's an idea. I and the diehards want to overcome that. Is this a way? How can we do it? I think a big part of it is, okay, the software can be just half-assed good enough, barely. And that would be fine. If it is or not, I hope so. But let's say it was just half-assed and barely good enough. The real thing is like, well, how do we approach it? Like the rules of order. Like, I don't want to dominate the topics. And then I'm sitting here having to decide, do we do topics like antinatalism, which might mean like I'm inviting Gary to come ruin my new thing? Or do we, things like, hey, put your position on abortion. I'm interested. I could go through all the things that people often have positions on and make a topic for each one of them and just do it one a day. But would that be noise and flotsam? I could focus on the things that I'm interested in, which I did a couple of them, and you could see that's not necessarily attracted other people's interest yet. So what are the topics? Because I want to put them up there both because I want to take part, but it's also a public service, and I'm perfectly happy to put up my own ideas. And if people don't want to talk about it, oh well. And if there's another topic and people are all talking about it, well, you'll probably find me over there taking part in that as well. So I don't want, I think there's a lot of thought to put into how to get it right, and I want other people's ideas. So if you leave a comment about that,